Hi everyone. Welcome to this really cool International Women's Day event. I am so chuffed that you're going to be meeting two of my most admired leaders and friends, and two wonderful women in the world of health, mental health, and well-being broadly. I'm going to introduce them in a second, but today is International Women's Day, and the theme is Inspire Inclusion. And this, I believe, is the symbol that we're all going to be promoting and supporting each other with through the International Women's Day, but hopefully throughout the year and throughout the years to come as women, but also as the allies that will be listening on here. Our theme today is going to be a vital aspect of women's health. We're going to be looking at the significance of movement on mental health and well-being through my two wonderful friends. I mean, I have, as many of you will know, I have lived experience and I live with long-term depression and anxiety, which takes its peak at some points in life, and most of the time it's pretty much in control. But it's in control with movement. That's one of the things that I adopted really early on, and has been a really key part of my life. And that has changed over the years. You know, when I was in my 20s, it used to be about running and cardio, and I didn't think yoga and meditation had a place in my life. And these days, it's much more about yoga, meditation, maybe dancing. But for me, also, movement is about belonging, which I didn't really fully recognize until sort of the last probably decade, where I'm like seeking out Kathak dancing in the UK in Brighton. You can imagine how difficult that is, right? But I recognize that I'm looking at going to classes because I want to hang out with other Asian women, and I've always loved Indian classical or Asian classical music. And how can I connect with that? I'm no good at it because it's so technically up there, but it's about belonging. And as I've already said, it used to be exercise and movement was definitely about like keeping my mind focused, feeling when my body felt strong, I felt in control. And when I felt in control, that helped create this safe space for recovery and healing. But also it's about soothing, self-soothing. I went to an event, and which actually Hannah's event. So Hannah's going to talk in a minute, but I went to an event, Hannah's first conference, Red January's Movements Mental Health Conference, or Health and Wellbeing Conference, and I met this amazing lady called Nahid, and she wrote this book called Soothe. And I've been digesting and practicing everything on Soothe, and I recognize that movement is also about self-soothing for me. So look, that's enough of me. Let me introduce my two wonderful friends. First of all, I've got Hannah Beecham, who's the founder of Red January, and I'm on brand with my Red January t-shirt. And then I've got Sunita Wazir, who is based in Mumbai, a global health and wellbeing leader at Unilever, who I've had the honor of working with over the last 2 years. So I'm going to bring both of them on screen here and invite them to have 20-minute, half an hour chat with me about movement and mental health. So first of all, let me connect with you, Hannah. Hannah, you inspire inclusion through movement all over the UK. And when we first met, Red January was just kicking off. And now you've even launched a chapter in Canada. Tell me about the story of the campaign and tell me how it began. What inspired you to kick off Red January?
What inspired me was my incredible mum. So, my mum experiences depression, and she was going through particularly challenging times during the winter. So, her symptoms were worsening during the winter. And with it being a loved one, of course, it does make you think what's out there to support my mum and all of us in the winter. And what I uncovered, won't come as a huge surprise, but there's so much evidence to show that we're not as active in the winter. We experience lower mood, lower energy. If you do experience mental health challenges, your symptoms may worsen. And it's one of those things, isn't it? When you see something, you can't unsee it. and just felt so strongly that there needs to be something out there that's positive in the winter to connect us all and give us all a goal to move in a way that works for us. So Red January started with me and my mum taking steps towards regularly moving in a way that worked for her. And what that looked like was things like starting to get up, shower, starting to step out the front door, go for a walk around the block, starting to enjoy a dog walk with our family dog, and starting to incrementally build up those steps, and for my mum to experience the impact of movement on her well-being. And now I can't quite believe I'm saying this, Poppy, but now we're heading into our 10 years of Red January. So Red January 2025, well, it's 10 years. And my mum is still a incredibly special, she's at the heart of that community. And each year she sets a movement challenge that works for her and her well-being. And it's now part of her supportive toolkit of things that she turns to as well. So she often enjoys sharing a dog walk with her friends. And during that time as well, it's just had this incredible ripple effect. And what we've just had almost 300,000 people in the UK embrace movement in a way that works for them. And not only that, as you've just said there, we've stepped outside of the UK as well. And we're really looking to support more countries and their communities to support their well-being too. And I guess the most fundamental thing for us, and the thing that we often get asked is, well, what happens in January? But the whole really kind of idea behind Red January is forming movement habits that will support you all year round. And we can see the impact that it's having day in, day out on the Red community. And it feels like we've only just begun as well. It's been 10 years, but it's incredible to see the ways that people embrace Red January in a way that works for them. It really is.
And I love the story of your mum, and I love that whole, breaking it down to when depression hits. I remember, well, I think I said to you at your conference, getting my trainers out was my first step this time round. And then like thinking about putting them on was the next step. And actually every little element of that is a really big win. I have to say, so this year we participated as a global team in Red January, and we had 15 participants from five team 15 participants from 5 teams in 4 countries. So we had colleagues from UK, Hong Kong, Portugal, India all join in. And the activities that we did were dog walking, dancing, boxing, running, swimming, natural walk and hike, tennis, squash, and yoga and Pilates between us all. So we were really, it's become a thing for us. Every January we form a WhatsApp group. We invite our teams to join, and then we send pictures. And then you wake up in the morning and you see what the Hong Kong lot have been doing, or the Asia team have been doing. And then you're like, well, I've got to get out now. So it has a, so let me come to you, Sunita. Now, you're the other end of what we're talking about in terms of just getting out and putting my trainers on for me. You've just done, first of all, you did a marathon in India. And then you've just done an ultra marathon. Like, wow. And then why? Why did you do that to yourself?
Yeah, I'm still trying to let that sink in, Poppy. And lovely to hear, your perspective, Hannah. To start with purpose is so brilliant. I mean, doing it for someone you love and then taking it to everyone else. Poppy, for me, it's very similar. Why did I do the ultra marathon? I think it's always been about the limiting beliefs. There are so many that we form over years. Now, I've been a runner for 13 and a half, 14 years, but I've always confined myself to a box, and I've said, I run, but I'm a slow runner. I run when I'm not busy with the kids. I run when I don't have time away from work, and it's always been about the but, right? I'd never given myself credit for the I run. And then guess what? This January, and Hannah, we'll talk about January and India, but this January, after 13 years of running the Mumbai Marathon, which I've done every year, I've always done the same distance, 21 kilometers, never stepped outside of the confines of what I believed I can do, because that was always something I can do. I did really well. I got better. And when something happens after 13 years, it's almost magical. I got faster. I had a brilliant run. It felt like I had broken some barriers in my own mind. And it was very liberating. Running has always been meditative for me. It's almost been, I always said, it's a therapy I never paid for, because that's it. You put on your shoes, you're on the road, you have a really good conversation with yourself. But it also leads to the community that you form, right? And for me, that's the other thing that's unique. This year, I became part of a community. I've always been a part of the community almost for 3 years now, but this community spurred me on. And when I did better at the January run, that's it. All of the other community members were like, all right, next challenge, you got to do something bigger. And, I would be the last person that would ever think about doing an ultra. And this one was tough because it was up in the mountains. Uh, 13 kilometers out of the 35 of the uphill were sort of really steep slopes. And I could not imagine it. I run in Mumbai by the sea on flat land. But I got it done, did the training, spent an intense amount of time between January and February. So it was just a 4 week gap in which to get trained and ready, which is usually not enough time. But I had sort of mentally prepared a while ago, and got up and did it. And guess what? It was amazing. It was one of the best experiences of life. And I think I just felt I had broken all those barriers already, but then I also stepped out of the limiting beliefs, which is so important. So yeah, that's why, to
And
be better.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it's like we're talking for the full spectrum here, aren't we, in terms of being able to just literally leave the house and do, and then how you over 13 years, and it doesn't really matter what the challenge is. It's not really about, whether it's an ultra or it's about your own, what I've heard from what you said is it's about your own mind and meditation and what you feel that you could build into this. Apart from being a formidable global health and well-being leader, you're also such an amazing role model for me, because I don't see very many Asian women doing marathons, and I certainly don't come across a lot of women in India or Mumbai, in South in our home countries. And I think there's a perception around safety, there's a perception around, like women don't run, and I might be completely being culturally irrelevant here, but can you just talk about that with your equalities hat on?
Yeah, Poppy, that's interesting, right? Because a lot of, first of all, running comes, I'm going to say it, though it doesn't sound right, but for my male runner friends, they seem to have a lot more of the basic strength that you need to do, distance running or ultra marathons. I see them growing, becoming speedier, becoming stronger, doing core training a lot faster. Just as we're going through the hormonal changes, life changes, aging, it's really hard to keep the pace going. But I have to tell you, I ran this particular race with a 70-year-old who's amazing. She was with me most of the way. We trained together. She finished just a little while after me. Another 60-year-old who beat me by a few minutes.
Wow.
And all of these women are doing this besides having very full lives, right? So it's about the balance. It's about the whole home responsibilities, because the social construct, as you well know, within South Asia is a lot of the responsibility falls on women. And yes, we have men that partner us and do the work, but I think systemically it's designed as women carry the load of the work more. And there's data around this. There's research that shows that within India, women carry more workload. I'll try and send you guys the paper. And therefore, to make time for it, what does one do? Now, very practically, that means a lot of the days in the last month, I woke up at 3 or 4 a.m. to make time besides work and everything else around my life. I love spending time with the kids. I love sending them off to school. And all of that is as important to me as the running habit is, right? So it's about cultivating the habit, overcoming those obstacles. And yes, safety is an issue, but then that's where the community comes in. That's the beauty of having a community, right? Find someone to be, 200 meters ahead of you, maybe 500 meters behind you, and you can get started. So for me, it's about that, overcoming the mental resistance, and then nature collides and helps. And of course, this is not to take away from people that face real danger on the roads, right? That is a reality. We need to be far more vigilant, but then we also need to cultivate the habit of being more watchful. So I always run facing the traffic, because traffic can be pretty heavy and intense here. So little tips, right? Make sure you're going on well-lit roads. Don't carry a lot of personal items. Be aware of your surroundings. That is a reality, but that's something you need to work around. So lots and lots of tips and community support.
And I love what you said there about cultivating and cultivating and removing the barriers, and that is inspiring inclusion, because if we don't make these movements and if we aren't seen in these spaces doing these amazing things that we want to do and can do, and I love the story of the two women that you run with. That's the inspiration for me, and then and other people that don't see themselves in that space. Hannah, let's come back to you. Sunita touched a little bit on research about, the burden on women and also movement, but let's go on the other side of the research. What research and evidence is there for physical movement having a positive impact on mental well-being? And also just touch on any of the inclusion agendas that we've just tapped into, because it's not Asia, it's everywhere, isn't it, where some people aren't engaging with movement because they don't see it as their space.
Where do I begin? There's so much evidence. There's so much evidence. We have had the great honor of partnering with the University of Oxford, who are our research partner. So I'm going to talk first just about Red January's own evidence to show that actually when you're moving more regularly in a way that works for you and your lifestyle, it shows that it's having a significant improvement on people's happiness and on their anxiety levels. That's certainly what the University of Oxford study reflected. I know you met them at the conference as well, Poppy, but we are also incredibly proud to be teaming up with the world's leading researcher into movement and mental health, Dr. Brendan Stubbs, who has done a huge body of research to show that actually realistic, and he calls it snackable movement breaks, is better than nothing at all. So you often see people talk about movement in terms of the 150 minutes, or you need to be doing X for this amount of time, and it needs to be this type of activity for you to experience a benefit. But Dr. Brendan, what we love about his approach is he comes through the lens of it can be any form of movement. And if it's enjoyed even just for a small amount of time, it's better than nothing at all. And that will have an impact on your well-being. And your point there, just around kind of inclusion, diversity, bringing communities together. If I'm honest, we've only just really scratched the surface of what that could look like and really the benefits that come from that. We do know, and it's very anecdotal, to be honest, up front, in terms of what we've experienced with the Red community. We've seen that when women especially come together in those community groups and embrace movement in a way that works for them, we've got so many stories to kind of evidence the fact that it is really boosting their energy levels, well-being, emotional health, all of those things. I often go out after January. I love chatting to Redders and understanding what their experience has been like. And the things that you often hear is movement becomes this byproduct. Actually, the connection, having those richer connections through the power of movement, is the thing that keeps them going back for more. They have often talked about how it's enriched their family bonds as well. I was speaking to some parents a few weeks back, and they were like, actually, you know what, at this time of year, often our teenagers would go up to their bedrooms and we just wouldn't really see them in the winter. But actually what Red January's done is it's given us an opportunity to come together with this shared goal. And we've had richer, more insightful conversations with our teenagers than we have in years through going on a walk or a bike ride. And I love hearing the power of coming together through movement and what that can do on your well-being, and just generally how you feel about yourself as well.
I think also the science, so I'm at an age where I'm definitely reconnecting and relearning my body. As Sunita referenced earlier, the hormone changes that are kicking in at this point. Me and Sunita went for a coffee when I was in Mumbai last September, and that's all I talked about was the hormone changes and actually the shock of all of that and not knowing where my strength lies. And so I've really adopted, and again, this book has been really helpful in helping me think through like what it's okay to relearn my body and relearn how I get back into this. And Sunita was talking about her beginnings of starting to run again, and and then I started to running again, very, very light. But it for a while I just didn't do it. But I think there's something definitely about the community and connections, but also the internal connection and actually just going it's okay to start from scratch and listen to your body in a different way. When I yoga and do physical activity, whatever that might be, I tune into my body a bit deeper, which I otherwise don't. On the days and the weeks that I don't, I'm not listening to my body in the same way, which is because the aches and pains are also your body like letting you know that it's alive, right? So
It's so true.
yeah. And I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be a Brit if I didn't talk about the weather. Hannah, you keep talking about the cold winters, which is where January started off. Sunita, it's so hot out there. What do Indians do for movement? Because it's too hot to
And it's,
do anything.
yeah, it's always hot, right? And Hannah, that's actually one of the things I wanted to tell you. Red January would be very different if you brought it to South Asia, or when you bring it to South Asia, simply because we're always hot. I mean, we have large parts of South Asia at least. So there are, of course, cold sections up in the mountains, but I'm literally, I've talked to all the Brits, and every week, every day, everyone's all about the gray weather and the rains. But here, it's humid at 5 a.m. So the run starts earlier and earlier. The ultra I did on 26th Feb, it started at 3 a.m. to beat the heat, right? So you start running at 3 a.m. and then you're running 5, 6, 7 hours from 3 a.m. to beat the sunrise. So it's almost like we're dodging the sun. And I like to think of it as I brought a lot of sunshine. I was in the UK last week with Poppy and others and literally brought sunshine because that's it, right? We carry the sun wherever we go. So that's it. You just find ways to cope, right? You go earlier, you hydrate a lot more, you avoid sunrise because once the sun goes up, that's it, you're going to be that much hotter. It takes different forms, right? You've got to find coping mechanisms, got to find a lot of coconut water along the way, lots of hydration, lots of salts, so the whole idea around it is you plan your hydration really well. But I think more importantly, that's where the power of communities comes in, right? Someone giving you a bit of a tip, here you go. So on the ultra, the thing I took away the most, and I keep going back to that because it's so fresh. First 10 days, right? I'm still basking in the glory, was that as a community of runners, 3,000 people running up this mountain, but everyone was giving each other tips, right? Slow down, have a slice of orange, dip it in salt. How do you cope with the heat, the humidity, the salt loss that you're having, and the vital fluids that you need? So I think that's so true for life as well. You meet people, as your mental health is deteriorating. If you're fortunate, you find people that will be that light for you in the dark tunnel, right? I think that really made a lot more sense to me over these years as I've been working in health and well-being. I found that people with purpose, people who see this as important, who want to do really the listening. They're not just hearing you, they're listening to you. They become that guiding light. So very much like a hydration plan on a really long run comes the relationships you nurture, the social, channels that you tap into so that you have those people to go to when things go wrong. And we've actually done that with a lot of success in our workplace, right? We have found that in the heart of the pandemic, when things were really very complicated for people and mental health started showing up as a conversation, surprisingly across the screen rather than in person. One would think that in person would be where people would share, but it actually, we were forced to do this across screens. That's when we really tapped into the power of communities, and we got phenomenal results. We saw a lot of people really opening up. So from hot weather to really heavy hearts, the unifier is finding the ability to listen and harvesting it and cultivating it, because we know earlier and earlier conversations help. So the parallel for me between a long run and someone supporting you with your mental health is just the time that you spend fully absorbed, immersed in that activity. When you're running, you're only running, and you're tuned into nature, you're tuned into your fellow runners. And equally, when you're supporting someone with their mental health, you need to be immersed as much. You need to make sure all of your mind and body is aligned and you're really listening without judgment. I think those are so importantly woven together.
And let me come to you, Hannah, on that social bond piece that Sunita's just so elegantly put. I do listening to you two. I mean, it's just great. I love this. But like that social bond bit, and we're, it is International Women's Day, and we are talking about inclusion and connecting with each other. And like, have you got I mean, I know you touched on it a little bit, but have you got examples within the workplace or within communities where that social bond has formed and actually it's grown into, I mean, the movement itself has done that, right? But have you got specific examples on that?
We have, yeah, just quickly, Sunita, you're really making me want to go for a run. That was just so beautifully poetic. I was like, oh, such beautiful words. And you touched upon it there, Sunita, and it's what we've seen in the reg community as well. We often see people inviting one other person out for a walk. Something that just feels quite gentle and simple can lead to just a really beautiful conversation and means that people are getting outdoors and moving. And also the thing that I love as well is we see women in the community often inviting a group of their friends or family members to go and enjoy something that they used to love. So this year, for example, we had a group of women embracing netball, something that they hadn't done since they were like 16. They're in their late 50s. And they were like, actually, together we could do this. It's something that they'd all been thinking about individually. But there was just something so beautiful about them making that decision together and that bit of accountability and having this goal and having fun with it. When they shared this with us, they were all laughing. It just felt so joyous. And so the thing that we often see is that kind of groups coming together and really kind of cheering each other on and embracing what movement is. And it can be playful and fun and all of those things. So we often see that as well. And I know we've talked before around kind of the role of technology and community groups online and things like that. And we often have a community of partners to give people the opportunity to choose what works for them. So last year, for example, we teamed up with This Girl Can, who do obviously incredible work here in the UK on reducing the barriers to embracing movement in a way that works for you. So things like girls only classes, like fitness classes and things like that. So again, it was just amazing to see the different ways that women were stepping into spaces that they'd been thinking about but hadn't quite felt like they had the confidence to step into them. It was just brilliant to see the joy that it was bringing into people's lives, ongoing as well, not just during January.
And I, on that point of technology, since the pandemic, more Indian classical dance forms have been accessible across the UK because of online. So people have, like the Zumba classes and yoga classes, everything went online. And suddenly you had all of these amazing classically trained dancers going, oh, I might just have a go at this. So that, I loved that. I was like, wow, like every time I'd look up, I'd get inspired by a bit of dancing, and then I'd look it up and it would be in, South London or Bradford, which is just not going to happen. But that technology aiding accessibility for those people that are busy, that can't get out, is a really, like, it's another thing that I wanted to just put out there today, is about inspiring inclusion. Like, be women listening to this, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you've got an art form or anything actually that you want to put out there, it's possible. It's possible. So, but Sunita, just coming back to you with your work head on now, how within Unilever or companies that you're working with, where do you see movement playing a role? One of the things that I think about in terms of movement impact in mental health is it removes the stigma of mental illness and the conversation about mental illness. You're enhancing mental wellness without talking about mental health, and I think that's really key. What your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I think it becomes so huge, right? The battle. It seems like so far away when you talk about distance running, physical activity, workouts, HIIT, whatever it is that people are doing. It seems really insurmountable. Almost like, where do I start, right? Where do I begin? What do I do today, tomorrow, the day after to get started with movement? And how do I get that? And we know, right? Physically, we know the way the system works, the happy hormones get unlocked. You really feel good. You feel the energy, and you feel like a sense of, having some sort of balance when you have had good physical activity. Now, how do we make sure that we don't make it, larger than life? How do we make it more accessible? How do we address the fact that when you're feeling mentally lighter, you're probably going to be able to work a lot better. When you're feeling okay physically, you're going to be able to do all the things you need to do, bring innovation, bring challenge, bring ideas to the workplace. One of the things I think that we do is, first of all, help people become more aware, because this whole idea, Hannah put it so beautifully, 150 minutes a week. 150 minutes a week seems like a lot to commit, right? And people find it really hard. So, what are the simple nudges or cues you can remind people to do for themselves? Take a walking break every 2 hours, take 5 minutes away to stand up, stretch. And I think the big thing that we've also really worked on is role modeling and storytelling, right? We use that a lot within the workplace, because telling someone to do it and actually showing up and doing it yourself, there's a huge difference in when you actually follow your own advice. And there are so many reminders. So we do different things, right? Within our factories, we run different campaigns around different health days, mental health days, to encourage better awareness of physical and mental health, but also then follow up with plans tailored for individuals to help them get moving. On a sort of more office-based staff level, I think we do a lot of reminders. We make sure we just nudge sort of people with the right activity. So make sure the coffee machines are a little far away. You have to walk to them, a walk to the cafeteria. I think it's important for us as workplaces to recognize that we need to build this into the way we are designed, into the way we work, rather than remind people and then not make it possible for them. So whatever workplaces are working on it, we have the opportunity to design right now that we've gone through these changes where people are working differently. They're working from home, they're working from offices, they're working from offsites. I think it's really, really important to think about how this is incorporated right into design, and then enabling it in the way we work. If you have 8 hours of meetings back to back, with no breaks, and there is no opportunity. So we have a very simple queue within Microsoft. Microsoft offers these tools, right? So Viva has these opportunities to block off. So your meetings are only 25 minutes instead of 30. So you have the 5 minutes to do the movement, grab a drink, building that into the way you work, offering people the opportunity to develop habits, because ultimately we're working towards habit change, right? The bad habits might have formed. We want them to change to the ones that work for you, and therefore making it accessible and making it possible. We keep doing the awareness building and the education, but eventually it's up to each individual to reach out and do what they do, right?
Mm.
The distance is something you have to walk yourself. And, that's where I think the storytelling and the nudges help. But our attempts are on. We try and make this happen with individuals, with teams. We try and keep encouraging the idea of movement, because it is positive and useful. And then we leave it to our people to find ways to incorporate it into their lives.
I loved when you very kindly gave me some space to work from yours when I was in Mumbai. The street that you've got. So Unilever's got in Unilever Hindustan is amazing building, but it's got this massive long street. And actually, at lunch times and break times, and even we walked up and down the street as we were chatting and doing meetings. And I saw that consistently through the whole 5 days that I was based there, that people were actually getting up, and there's a beautiful and so I guess something, it's like everything, isn't it? Fostering and creating the environment for change. And then I think over time, people move into that space and take in that space. So look, I've just got one final question for both of you. Given the theme, and we've talked about inspiring inclusion, throughout this whole thing, the whole chat has been about that. But what advice would you give to any person, or women particularly, given that it's International Women's Day, to actually those, and particularly those that might be struggling, to just take that first step towards their health? Let me come to you first, Hannah.
So the advice that we often share is sharing. So sharing where you're at with someone that you know and trust. What we often hear as well, when people share it with a friend, family member, colleague even, you're often not alone in feeling the way that you are. And so actually sharing those experiences, what we've heard in the past as well through Redders is that people have provided some inspiration or advice, or let's do this together. Let's take that first step together. What could that look like? Just a bit of inspiration, but feeling, Sunita, you'd mentioned this earlier, that feeling heard as well. Just giving people that opportunity to know that where they're at currently is completely normal. And actually together, perhaps we could take that first step. So sharing that experience, sharing where you're at. If sharing feels a touch too far right now, we often encourage people to really think about what movement could mean to them, because movement stands for so much. In the experience of my mum, for example, getting out of bed, walking to the local shops instead of using the car. So perhaps just thinking about your day to day and how you could start to incorporate movement, small, realistic steps is more than enough. And also the biggest kind of takeaway that we've seen from the Red community when they do take that first step is knowing that for all of us, motivation ebbs and flows. We're human beings. So it's just being really kind to yourself as well. So when you take that step, know that the next step might not come straight away, and that's okay too. We're all on this journey together. But certainly what we've seen from sharing the experience, so much can come from that. It really can.
Thanks, Hannah. Sunita?
Yeah, I'm going to say a lot of what Hannah said, right? Taking that first step, putting on those shoes, just waking up in the morning. So a lot of people tell me I can't do this because, my knees, or I don't have the time, or there's different. I've heard every possible excuse to not start with exercise over these maybe the last decade. And I think the first thing is you don't have time, you have to make it, right? So make yourself a priority and put it in your calendar, because when you approach something with the discipline and rigor that you do your work, you're likely to get it done, right? So that's the first piece. Build that habit, put it in your calendar, make time. And the second one is it's going to be about just waking up, putting on those shoes, getting out the door, whatever the activity you do, whatever the movement, or whether it's getting your yoga mat out and lying down on the floor at home. The idea is always have to be better than yourself. It's not a competition. You're not trying to beat anyone else's numbers. I was never drawn to someone else's, thousands of kilometers, distances done, podiums, medals. All of that is nice. It is all very contextual. It's that 1% improvement. How are you improving over yourself yesterday or last week or last month? That limiting belief that you can't be better, or that unconscious bias that you have, and the way you talk about yourself, right? That's also really important. So for me, it's the mind. Get your mind ready. A lot of these are just getting those barriers in your head cleared up. Talk about yourself more positively, make the plan, and then execute it. And then magic will happen. It's inevitable, right? You will find energy to do more, and maybe there are days you don't, but then you pick up, put those shoes on again, and get out of the door. And that 1% improvement is what you're looking for every day. So that's my message.
Thanks so much, Sunita. So I have to say, we talked about Red India. Do you think you two might have a chat? Do you think that might be possible?
Well, yeah, we'll get talking, Hannah, in a few
I would
days.
love that. I would love that, definitely. We need to go for a run and a chat, Sunita. I think that's what we need to do.
I think you
Absolutely,
two
without a doubt.
definitely need to do that together. So if it happens, it started here, and I take credit for it, and I want to be at the launch and everything else. Look, you two inspire me. You inspire inclusion. Thank you so much for being my friends, first of all, and thank you so much for joining me today. And love and inspire inclusion to every woman out there.